Γεια σας την υγεία.
Salam bar salamati. Hello to health.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something really foundational, I think, in health. We're going deep into medical historiography, which isn't just, medical history, but it's the study of how we write that history. What are the challenges, the biases, and why understanding all this is? Well, it's just crucial for anyone involved in healthcare today.
It absolutely is. Because the story we tell ourselves about medicine, it's never just a neutral list of facts, is it? It's always an interpretation.
Right.
And as soon as you look back, you hit this immediate problem, this historian's dilemma we call presentism.
Ah, presentism. Okay, so that's judging the past using today's ruler, basically.
Right.
Like if we look at Hippocrates and the Four Humor, should we measure that against modern germ theory? Or do we have to stick strictly within, say, the world of 400 BC?
Exactly that dilemma. Look, medical historiography, it's a reconstruction. It's not like taking a photograph. You can't completely erase what we know now. That's just impossible.
Yeah, you can't unknow things.
Precisely. But the goal is to really try to understand the context of the time. If you don't, you just end up, making these simplistic judgments that don't really teach us anything useful.
And that's the key, isn't it? I always think of the Semmelweis example.
Oh, Semmelweis is classic.
Yeah.
1840s, pushing for hand washing to stop childbed fever. The resistance he faced wasn't just stubbornness.
Yeah.
It was tied to a whole different understanding of disease miasma, bad air, invisible atmospheric stuff, not tiny particles on hands.
And understanding that resistance, that intellectual framework, stops us from just pointing fingers at the past.
And maybe more importantly, it helps us see similar patterns today, doesn't it? We like to think new science just automatically wins out.
Yeah, truth prevails instantly.
But history shows acceptance is this really complex social thing. It was true for hand washing. It's true for, vaccine hesitancy or adopting AI in medicine right now.
Okay, so that leads to a great question. Who was actually writing this history for so long? The sources say it was overwhelmingly physician-centric, written by doctors for doctors.
Yeah, for centuries, that was the dominant mode, and it served a very clear purpose, really. It was about reinforcing the profession.
How so?
Well, strengthening that professional identity, showing the public this story of constant progress and kind of protecting the human side of medicine from getting lost in specialization or, frankly, commercial pressures.
And the writing style sort of reflected that goal. The term used is hagiographic.
Hagiographic. It's worth unpacking that. Hagiography is traditionally writing about saints' lives, right? Often very idealized.
To inspire virtue, yeah.
So in medical history, it meant these overly flattering, heroic stories, focusing on the great physicians, the Oslers, the Welch. It paints history as this smooth, heroic march forward, uninterrupted progress.
But things got more complicated in the 20th century, especially as history became more of an academic discipline. The sources talk about three main streams emerging, moving beyond just the heroes. Can we break those down?
Sure. So the first stream, it's still focused on great figures and events. Looking at key turning points, important people like Avicenna, or big events like the Black Death and its impact.
Okay, individuals and major moments.
The second approach kind of zoomed out. Looked at structural and institutional developments. This is the long game. How did hospitals change over centuries? How did medical schools or licensing boards take shape? Much slower, broader trends.
Right, the systems.
And then the third stream dug into the evolution of medical ideas and concepts. So historians started asking, where did the idea of prevention come from? How did quarantine become a thing? How did our definition of a doctor's role actually change over time? Each gives you a different angle on the past.
And these different ways of looking at history didn't just appear out of nowhere. There were people and institutions driving these changes.
Absolutely. You had early figures like Daniel Leclerc in Geneva, John Friend in London, he wrote The History of Physics.
But the real shift came later.
Yeah, a big turning point was getting dedicated university positions like Charles Victor d'Arenberg in Paris in 1870. And specialized journals started appearing, like Janus.
And then the modern pioneers, people like Karl Sudhoff in Germany, and especially Henry Siegrist over at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
Siegrist seems like he really pushed for a different view.
Oh, Siegrist was hugely influential. He really championed the social history of medicine. He argued very forcefully that history couldn't just be about famous doctors and breakthroughs.
That had to be bigger.
Much bigger. It had to include the patient's experience, society, social conditions, public health. Why was healthcare expensive? Who could actually get it? How did things like war impact health policy? Questions that made the old narratives maybe a bit uncomfortable.
That must have caused some friction, moving the study of medicine sort of out of the hands of just physicians and into broader history departments, sociology.
Oh, absolutely. There was definitely a tension. You had the traditional physician historians often focused on professional progress, and then these new social historians looking at context, power, and sometimes offering critiques. But we should also remember this kind of deeper scholarship needed resources. And institutions like the Sir William Osler Library, or especially the massive collections gathered by Sir Henry Wellcome, which eventually led to the Wellcome Trust. They provided the raw materials for these new studies.
Now, thinking about those social studies, one big theme that seems to come up is this idea of conflict.
Yes, the conflict narrative, the idea of a constant battle almost between science happening in the lab and the doctor doing clinical work at the bedside.
Where did that particular idea come from, that these two were always at odds?
A lot of it emerged from the sociology of medicine, actually. Some analysts argued that physicians embraced lab science partly to gain professional status and public credibility, not just purely for better treatments.
A power play.
Sort of. And when you focus through the disagreements and the jurisdictional squabbles, that conflict story really takes root. It paints the clinician and the scientist as these almost opposing forces.
But looking at the newer research mentioned in the sources, that picture might be, well, a bit too simple. It sounds like collaboration was actually pretty common.
That's a really important point. Conflict definitely existed, no doubt. But newer work, like Sturdy's research, shows that close collaboration was often the norm, and frequently the engine of progress.
So why did the conflict story stick so hard?
Well, conflict makes for a good story, doesn't it? It's dramatic. It simplifies complex changes into a kind of tradition versus modernity battle. It's easier to grasp, perhaps, but often misses the nuance of how things actually worked on the ground.
That helps make sense of that other persistent debate. Is medicine an art or a science? It sounds like, according to some researchers like Lawrence, this might have been less about a fundamental divide and more about strategy.
Exactly. Lawrence suggested it was often a rhetorical tool. Physicians became quite adept at emphasizing whichever aspect, art or science, best defended their professional autonomy at that particular moment.
Interesting. So if they felt threatened by, say, too much scientific reductionism or government rules,
They'd highlight the art, the intuition, the experience, the immeasurable wisdom of the clinician.
but if their effectiveness was questioned,
Then they'd lean heavily on the science, the measurable outcomes, the technology. It wasn't necessarily that they saw an unbridgeable gap, but it was a useful way to frame things depending on the audience or the challenge.
so the doctor could be both the wise healer and the cutting-edge scientist, depending on the situation. That's fascinating how language is used to maintain professional standing.
Absolutely. It's about managing perception.
Okay, so if the art science thing was partly rhetoric, what were the really undeniable concrete changes, the big paradigm shifts that forced everyone to rewrite the medical story?
Well, I think one of the absolute biggest was the move away from just relying on ancient authorities like Galen towards direct observation and experimentation. You know, William Harvey actually measuring blood flow in the 17th century. That was revolutionary.
Breaking from the books to look at the body itself.
Exactly. And then, of course, the 19th century work of Pasteur and Koch, identifying specific microbes causing specific diseases. That just changed everything about understanding illness.
And jumping way forward, the discovery of DNA's structure. That must have been another seismic event for understanding life and disease.
Fundamentally. And now, in the 21st century, we're seeing this incredible technological acceleration that's even challenging how we do historiography. The Human Genome Project finishing in 2003, that really kicked off the era of personalized medicine.
Right, moving away from one-size-fits-all treatments towards things tailored to your specific genetic makeup.
And we see it everywhere now, don't we? Gene therapies for conditions like hemophilia, immunotherapy revolutionizing cancer treatment, the sheer speed of mRNA vaccine development during COVID. These aren't just small steps. They feel like major historical shifts happening right now.
And it's fueled by this convergence, this mix of biology, data science, engineering. We're getting tools that sound like science fiction.
Think about ctDNA, circulating tumor DNA. Finding tiny bits of tumor DNA in a blood test, That's incredible.
Hmm?
Or things like the cyberknife robotic radiosurgery zapping tumors precisely without big incisions. The story moves from the scalpel to data and energy beams.
And even looking further out, things like brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, helping people with severe disabilities control devices with thought alone, the pace is just staggering.
It really is. And all this change makes the historian's job incredibly complex. One persistent challenge is still retrospective diagnosis.
Trying to diagnose diseases of the past using modern categories.
Yes, and you have to be so careful. A fever described in a 16th century text might not map neatly onto any single disease we recognize today. The symptoms, the understanding, it was all different.
And more generally, the field itself, as we discussed, is just getting broader, richer. It's not just about the doctors anymore.
Thank goodness. Historians are now really digging into the roles of patients, nurses, midwives, looking at health policy, how culture shapes illness. It gives us a much more complete and frankly more realistic picture. We're finally incorporating the experiences of most people, not just the medical elites.
And interestingly, technology is helping that shift too.
Yeah.
Through accessibility, the internet, digitized archive. It means more people can get involved.
Yeah, we're seeing regular people researching their own family health histories, even participating in citizen science or online history projects. It's democratizing access to the past in some ways.
So where does this leave the future of medical history? What's the trajectory?
Well, it's definitely going to be more interdisciplinary, but I think the biggest shift, the biggest challenge and opportunity is grappling with big health data.
Meaning
Meaning these enormous, often anonymized digital data sets, electronic health records, genomic data warehouses.
how does that change things for historians?
Think about it. Historically, sources were often narratives, diaries, case notes written by people. Now, the source might be billions of quantitative data points generated automatically. The historian of the future might need data science skills as much as archival skills. It's a fundamental change in what historical evidence even looks like.
Wow. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. For you listening, the big takeaway here is that the story of medicine, it's not fixed. It's not a straight line.
Not at all. Who writes it, why they write it, the angle they take, are they celebrating heroes or are they critiquing power structures? All of that completely shapes how we see the medical past.
And that image we hold directly impacts our present.
Absolutely. Knowing this history, this historiography, it's really part of essential medical literacy today.
So maybe the provocative thought to leave you with is this. With everything changing so fast, with all this new technology and data, how are we, right now, choosing to tell the story of medical history?
Yeah. What are we prioritizing? Is it all about the shiny new breakthroughs, the gene therapies, and AI diagnostics? Or are we making sure we also capture the social side, the patient experiences, the fights over access, the ongoing issues of equity?
Because the story we emphasize today, that really shapes our expectations of healthcare, the trust we place in doctors, even how we understand being healthy or sick ourselves. That choice is defining our present just as much as it's recording our past.
All said.
Thank you for diving deep with us.
Microscopia presents Long Live Life.
Vive la vie.
Long live life.